The IRS just made it official. Stimulus payments are going out. And if you're watching this on March 7th or after, you need to stop everything right now, because this could directly affect your bank account. We're talking about real money hitting real people's accounts. But here's the catch. Not everyone qualifies. The IRS has a very specific list of who gets paid, how much they're receiving, and, most importantly, when that money actually lands. Are you on the list? That depends on a few key factors: your income, your filing status, and whether the IRS even has your correct information on file. Millions of Americans are going to wake up to a direct deposit they weren't expecting, while others will be left wondering why their payment never showed up. And if you think this doesn't apply to you, you might want to think again. There are groups of people who qualify for this round that were completely left out before, including some retirees, low-income households, and even certain non-filers who never received previous checks. In the next few minutes, I'm going to break down exactly who qualifies, how much you could receive, and what steps you need to take today to make sure your payment doesn't get delayed or sent to the wrong place. This information is time sensitive, so if this video helped you out, smash that like button right now so more people can see this before it's too late. So now that you understand what's at stake, let's dive deep into everything you need to know about these stimulus payments: who's getting paid, how much, and what you need to do right now to make sure you don't miss out. Let's start with the big picture, because context matters here. The IRS doesn't just randomly send out payments. There's always a reason, a legal framework, and a process behind every single check or direct deposit that goes out. And in this case, the payments being confirmed for March 7th and beyond are tied to something very specific that a lot of people have been waiting on for quite some time. These are not new stimulus checks in the traditional sense, but they are real money, and they are going to real people. So let's break down exactly what's happening. What the IRS has confirmed is the continuation and, in some cases, the initiation of catch-up payments related to previous stimulus rounds that were either miscalculated, missed entirely, or sent to the wrong place. You might remember that during the COVID-era stimulus rollouts, there were millions of Americans who either didn't receive their full payment, received nothing at all, or had payments sent to outdated bank accounts or addresses. The IRS has been working through this backlog, and what's happening now is essentially a correction sweep, a large-scale effort to make sure that the people who are owed money actually get it. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, but that was years ago, why is this still happening? And that's a fair question. The answer is that the IRS processes an enormous volume of returns and payment records, and cross-referencing all of that data takes time. There were also legal challenges, eligibility disputes, and changes in filing status for millions of Americans that created delays. Some people moved. Some people changed bank accounts. Some people never filed a return at all, which made them almost invisible to the system. The IRS has been using updated data, new matching technology, and information from state agencies to track down eligible recipients who fell through the cracks, and that effort is now bearing fruit in the form of these confirmed March payments. So who exactly is getting paid? Let's get into the specifics, because this is where it really gets interesting and where a lot of people are going to find out they qualify when they didn't expect to. The first major group is people who received partial payments during the original stimulus rounds. If your payment was based on your 2019 or 2020 tax return and your income or family situation changed significantly in 2021, you may have been underpaid. The IRS is now using more current data to calculate what you were actually owed versus what you received, and the difference is being sent out now. For some families, that difference is only a couple $100s. But for others, especially larger households or those who experienced a significant drop in income, that gap could be well over $1,000. The second group is people who never received their payments at all. This is more common than most people realize. There were tens of millions of Americans who were technically eligible for stimulus payments but never got them, either because they didn't file taxes, because they were listed as dependents in one year but not another, or because the IRS simply didn't have accurate contact information on file. If you fall into this category, the IRS may be reaching out to you directly, or a payment may already be queued up and on its way without you having done anything at all. That's right. Some people are going to receive money they didn't even know they were owed, and it's going to show up either as a direct deposit or as a paper check in the mail. The third group is Social Security recipients and other federal benefit recipients who had complicated eligibility situations. A lot of seniors and disabled Americans faced unique challenges during the stimulus rollouts because their income information wasn't always in the standard IRS database. It was held by the Social Security Administration, the Veterans Administration, or another federal agency. Coordination between these agencies was often slow and imperfect, and as a result, some of the most vulnerable Americans were left waiting the longest. The IRS has now completed a more thorough reconciliation with these other agencies, and payments that were held up in that interagency process are now being released. The fourth group includes people who filed amended returns. If you went back and filed a corrected tax return for 2020 or 2021, maybe because you realized you had additional dependents to claim, or because you had initially filed incorrectly, your amended return may have triggered a recalculation of your stimulus eligibility. Those recalculations are now being finalized, and payments are going out to people whose amended returns showed they were owed more than they received. And then there's a fifth group that most people don't even think about: non-filers who use the IRS non-filer portal during the pandemic. The government actually set up a special tool specifically to help people who don't normally file tax returns get their stimulus payments. Millions of people use that tool, but not everyone who used it successfully got their money. Technical issues, data entry errors, and eligibility questions left some of those payments in limbo. The IRS has now gone back through those records and is issuing payments to non-filers whose claims were validated but never processed. Now let's talk about the amounts, because everyone wants to know, how much money are we actually talking about? The amounts vary significantly depending on your situation, and that's important to understand. This is not a one-size-fits-all payment. Some people will receive a few $100s because they were underpaid by a small amount during a previous round. Others will receive multiple thousands of dollars if they missed out on more than one payment, or if they have dependents who were not properly accounted for. The IRS calculates each payment individually based on your specific eligibility record, so there's no single number that applies to everyone watching this video. What we do know is that the maximum recovery rebate credit for a single filer who missed the third stimulus entirely was around $1,400. For a married couple filing jointly, that number doubled to $2,800. And for every qualifying dependent in your household, an additional $1,400 could be added on top of that. So if you're a family of 4 and you missed all 3 stimulus rounds, which some families did, you could theoretically be looking at a payment in the range of several $1,000s. Again, that's the maximum scenario, and most people won't see numbers that high, but it illustrates just how significant these catch-up payments can be for families who were truly left out. Now, here's something really important that a lot of people overlook, and I don't want you to be one of them. The IRS has deadlines. There is a window during which you can claim money that you're owed, and once that window closes, it closes permanently. For most of the COVID-era stimulus credits, the ability to claim your money through your tax return has either already passed or is rapidly approaching its final deadline. This means that if you believe you're owed stimulus money and you haven't yet taken action, time is genuinely running out. For tax year 2021, the deadline to file a return and claim any missing payments through the recovery rebate credit was in April of 2025. If you missed that deadline without filing, your options are now much more limited. However, and this is critical, if the IRS has already identified you as someone who is owed money based on their own records, you may still receive a payment even if you didn't file. That's the automatic payment scenario I mentioned earlier. But if you are someone who needs to actively claim your money through a return and you haven't done so, you need to talk to a tax professional immediately to understand what options you still have. Let's talk about how to check whether a payment is coming your way, because the last thing you want to do is sit around wondering and miss something important. The IRS has an online tool called Get My Payment that has been updated multiple times over the years to reflect the current status of stimulus-related payments. If you go to the IRS website, and make sure you're going to the official irs.gov site, not a third-party site trying to collect your information. You can enter your social security number, date of birth, and mailing address to check the status of any pending payments. If a payment has been scheduled for you, it will show up there along with the expected delivery date and the method, whether it's direct deposit or a paper check. If you have direct deposit information on file with the IRS from a recent tax return, that's almost certainly how your payment will arrive. Direct deposit is faster, more secure, and less likely to get lost than a paper check. If the IRS doesn't have your banking information, they'll send a paper check or, in some cases, a prepaid debit card to the address they have on file. This is why it's so important to make sure your address is current with the IRS, especially if you've moved recently. You can update your address with the IRS by filing Form 8822, and you should do that as soon as possible if you think a payment might be heading your way. One thing I really want to emphasize here is the issue of scams, because unfortunately, every time the IRS issues payments, scammers come out of the woodwork trying to take advantage of people. You need to know this. The IRS will never call you and ask for your personal information in order to send you a payment. They will never email you asking you to click a link to claim your stimulus money. They will never text you asking for your bank account details. Any communication that comes through those channels is a scam, full stop. The IRS communicates primarily through physical mail, and if you receive a letter from the IRS, a real physical letter, it will include a notice number in the upper right-hand corner that you can look up on the IRS website to verify its authenticity. Please protect yourself and your family by being skeptical of anyone who contacts you out of the blue offering to help you get your stimulus payment, especially if they're asking for a fee or your personal financial information. There is no fee to receive a stimulus payment. It's your money and the IRS sends it to you for free. Now let's talk about what happens if your payment doesn't arrive when it's supposed to, because even with the best systems in place, things sometimes go wrong. If the IRS shows that your payment was sent but you never received it, the first step is to wait at least a few days beyond the expected delivery date before panicking. Paper checks can take up to 3 weeks to arrive by mail, and even direct deposits can sometimes take a day or two beyond the scheduled date to show up in your account depending on your bank. If you've waited a reasonable amount of time and still nothing has arrived, the next step is to contact the IRS directly. You can call the IRS helpline, though wait times can be long, so be patient and persistent. You can also visit a local taxpayer assistance center in person, which sometimes allows for faster resolution of payment issues. If your direct deposit was sent to an account that you no longer have access to, for example, if the bank account was closed, the bank is required to return the funds to the IRS, at which point the IRS will reissue the payment as a paper check to your address on file. This process can take several weeks, so again, patience is key. But don't give up. If the IRS shows that money was sent to you, it is your money, and there are processes in place to make sure you ultimately receive it. Let's also take a moment to talk about the broader economic picture here, because understanding the context of why these payments matter helps you appreciate the urgency of making sure you claim what you're owed. We are living through a period of significant economic pressure for a lot of American households. Inflation over the past few years has eroded purchasing power in ways that hit working class and middle class families the hardest. Grocery bills are higher, rent is higher, utilities are higher. In that environment, even a few $100s of unexpected money can make a real difference. It can cover a utility bill, help stock the pantry, make a car payment, or prevent a family from falling behind on rent. For people at the lower end of the income spectrum, these catch-up payments aren't just a nice bonus. They represent meaningful financial relief during a time when every dollar counts. That's part of why the IRS's effort to proactively identify and pay eligible recipients, rather than waiting for people to come forward and claim their money, is so significant. It reflects a recognition that the people most likely to have fallen through the cracks during the original rollout are also the people least likely to have the resources or knowledge to navigate the complex process of claiming what they're owed. By taking a more proactive approach, the IRS is essentially trying to correct some of the equity failures of the original stimulus program. Now, I want to address something that comes up a lot in the comments on videos like this, and that's the question of whether receiving a stimulus payment affects your taxes. The short answer is no. Stimulus payments are not considered taxable income. You do not have to pay taxes on money you receive as a recovery rebate credit or as a catch-up stimulus payment. This is true regardless of how much you receive. The IRS will not send you a 1099 form for your stimulus payment, and you don't need to report it as income when you file your taxes. What the payment can affect is your eligibility for certain income-based credits and programs. So if you're close to an income threshold for something like Medicaid or SNAP benefits, it's worth talking to a benefits counselor to understand how a lump sum payment might affect your eligibility. But from a pure income tax standpoint, you're in the clear. Let's also address the question of what happens if you've already moved on and assumed you were never going to see your stimulus money. A lot of people made that mental adjustment years ago. They figured the window had closed, the ship had sailed, and they were never going to get what they were owed. But the fact that the IRS is still issuing these catch-up payments in March of this year tells you something important. It's not too late for everyone. If you haven't checked your status recently, check it now. If you haven't filed a return for 2021 and you think you might be eligible for a recovery rebate credit, talk to a tax professional to find out if there's still a path forward for you specifically. The landscape around these payments is nuanced, and the right answer for your situation depends on factors that are unique to you. Your filing history, your income level, your family situation, your banking information. Generic advice can only go so far, and the most valuable thing you can do is take action based on your specific circumstances, rather than assuming that what applies to someone else applies to you. What I want you to take away from this video is a sense of empowered urgency, not panic. Urgency. The money is out there. The IRS has confirmed these payments are going out. Your job right now is to make sure you know whether you're on the list. Verify that the IRS has your current information, and take action if something needs to be corrected. Don't wait. Don't assume. Don't let inertia cost you money that is rightfully yours. Go to irs.gov, use the Get My Payment tool, and if anything looks off or unclear, contact a qualified tax professional who can walk you through your options. Share this video with your family and friends, because there are people in your life who are owed money and have no idea. Be the person who helps them find out. This is your money. Go get it.